Hi, this is Dr. C, and I'm here to talk to you about JavaScript variable types. So you know now what variables are. Let's talk about the different types of variables you can have. There basically are four simple variable types in JavaScript: string, integer, float, and Boolean. And I mentioned character here because character is sort of a subdivision of string. Okay, so basically there's the four. And these four, the type of your variable is based on the type of data that you want the variable to hold. Do you want it to hold a string, an integer, a float, a Boolean, or a character? So let's look at what that means. Let's say we have, we're going to look at several examples. Let's say we have this statement: let grade get the value of 8. So here I'm creating a variable and I'm initializing it to 8. That is, I'm putting an 8 into the grade container, or the container named grade. Okay? In this case, 8 is a number with no decimal places, and that is called an integer. So that is what we would call an integer variable. Grade is holding an integer. Okay? The next one is float. Float is decimal. It's also called real. So you'll hear it called float or real for the most part, but what it is decimal. And you can have as many decimal places as you want. So here we've got a variable named price that we've created with the let command, and then we assigned a value of 1.50 to price. So let price get the value of 1.50. So price, the container named price, is holding the float number, or the real number, 1.50. Okay? And then we have string. This is probably the most common one. A string is our characters, like words, or a sentence. It's a bunch of text. So in this first example, let pet get the value of dog. Well, first of all, those double quotes say that anything between the double quotes is one string. So it can be one word, it could be one sentence, it could be a paragraph. All right, and all of those would be considered strings. Now in JavaScript, we can use a single quote like you see in the second example here. Let pet get the value of, single quotes, cat. And you can use either doubles or singles as long as the first one and the last one match. You can't use a double in the front and a end with a single. But either one is okay. All right? And then the third thing I wanted to point out about string variables is this third example here: let zip code get the value of the string 68069. And this is showing you that numbers can be strings, because you can treat a number like we did in the first two examples, like a number. I could add 10 to this number and get 18. I could add 3 to this number and get 3.5. However, I cannot add a number to a string. The computer sees this as the character 6, the character 8, the character 0, the character 6, the character 9. It thinks of this the same way it thinks of dog: the character D, the character 0 or O, the character G. So you can't do math with this. Whenever you're doing numbers like a zip code or a phone number that you don't want people to do math with, you go ahead and put quotes around it so the computer knows it's a string and not a number that you want to do math with. Okay? And then here's that subset of strings called a character. And you notice I use that word up here. Basically, it's one letter or one number in the sense of one of these. Like I could have double quote 6, double quote. And that would be the character 6. Here we have the character C goes in the variable holder. Holder gets a value of the character C. And then finally we have Boolean. Boolean variables. Boolean is from mathematics, and it's a term that means there's two possible values: true or false. True is always given a 1 by a computer, false is a 0. So you'll see it both ways, true, false, 1, 0 on Boolean. And we usually use true and false in JavaScript. So here in this example, I've got a variable named guess that I'm creating with the let command, and I'm putting true into it. So let guess get the value of true. And in JavaScript, the true and the word false are both lowercase. Remember, this is case sensitive, so they both have to be lowercase. That's how JavaScript wants to see them. Okay, another thing you can do with variables is parse them. And that means you can change the type of a value that a variable is holding while your program is running. So for example, you can change the string or the character 4 into the number 4 so you can do math with it. And we'll see an example of that in a moment. Now it turns out there's 2 predefined programs which are called functions. Functions are little encapsulated programs that do one thing. There's 2 of these already written or predefined, pre-created in JavaScript that you can use to parse a string into a number. Remember, we have 2 kinds of numbers, integers and floats. Okay, so you have to have one of these functions that changes strings into integers and one that changes strings into floats. The one that changes strings into integers is parse int, and notice it's camel case with a capital P and a capital I. That has to be. That's the name of the little program, and what you're sending it, the string you're giving it to parse or change into a number, in this case an integer, is a string, and it goes between the parentheses. And parse float is its counterpart for changing to a float number. Okay. Now let's look at an example. So let's say the problem is you want to write a program that gets the user's age and then adds 10 to their age and displays how old they'll be in 10 years. All right, so obviously you're going to have to do a little math here. All right, so we need an algorithm first. So the first thing I want my program to do is to make an empty variable named age to hold the user's age. The second thing I want to do with this program is get the user's age from the user and put it into that variable. Third thing is add 10 to the user's age. And the fourth thing is show the result to the user. So with that algorithm, let's write the code. So I'm going to look at this first line of the algorithm, make an empty variable to hold age. So that's what I've done in this first line of code. Let age get the value of, and I just use single quotes. Now I put a blank here, but I only put that so that you can see that I've got single quote, single quote. Really, I would not put a blank there. I just put single quote right next to it. Okay, the second line of the algorithm says get the user's age from the user. There's a command called prompt with parentheses, and prompt puts up a pop-up window, and it says on the window whatever you put in these parentheses, and it's a string, so it goes between quotes. In this case, I want it to say enter your age : and it's a pop-up, and then the user can type in their age, and whatever they type in will get put into this variable that I created up here, the age variable. However, there's a little tricky thing about prompt. Prompt always brings in the data that you type in response to it as a string type. Okay, so let's say the user enters 27. Well, 27 will get put into age, but it's the characters 2 and 7 that will get put into age, the string 27, not the number 27. So now this has got a string in it, and I want to add 10, so I need to use parse here. And let's say we told the user to enter their age in a whole number. So I can say parse int, and I make sure to have a capital P and I. In the middle of the parentheses, I put the name of the variable that's holding that user age string. So this is holding the characters 2, 7. So this will change or parse the quote 2, 7 and change it into an integer, and then it'll add 10. So 27 the number plus 10 is 37 the number, and it'll put that back into this container or variable. Oops, sorry, the age variable. So now age holds the number 37. And finally, show the result to the user from the algorithm. I'm going to use the alert. I'm going to use a template literal. So I've got a tick here. Oh, I have a typo. I need a tick here too. I'm going to stop for a second and fix that. There we go. So I have a starting tick here and an ending tick here. And that tells me that everything in between is a template of what I want to show in the pop-up window that the alert creates. So I want it to say, in 10 years you will be. And then this is a placeholder. And it says, okay, we're putting a variable in between the curly brackets. It's the variable age, which again holds the number 37. So this will say, in 10 years you will be 37, and then space, years old, exclamation point. All right? So I followed my algorithm, I wrote the code. The next step is to run it. Oops. And I'm going to go ahead and run it, and I'll be right back. Hi, this is Dr. C, and I'm here to talk to you about JavaScript variable types. So there are 4 simple variable types in JavaScript: string, integer, float, and Boolean. Integer and float are number types, and string are text, and Boolean is a special case that we'll look at in a moment. Now, character I have written here because character is sort of a subset of string. String is text, like a sentence, a word, a paragraph. It's a whole bunch of letters and numbers and spaces all strung together. Character is one of those. A letter, a number character, a space, okay? And basically these 4 types, the type of variable you have, it depends on the type of data you want the variable to hold. If you want the variable to hold a name, it would be a string. So let's look at some examples. Let's say we have a variable named grade. So I create a variable named grade, let grade, get the value of 8. I put the number 8 into grade. I saved the 8 into the container grade. Okay? 8 is an integer. So if I'm putting an integer into the grade variable, that means the grade variable is an integer variable. Okay? The other number type is float. And here we have an example. I created a variable named price, and then I put a floating number, 1.50, into price. Float is a decimal number. It's also called real. So you'll hear it called float, real, and decimal. But mostly you will not hear decimal. You'll hear float and real. You can have as many decimal places as you want. Tons of them. So we've got integer, which is like a whole number, no decimal places. Float, which is a decimal number. It has decimals. And then we have string. String is probably the most common. These are the 3 most common actually, but string's really common. So I put a few examples here. We have the first one, let pet get the value of dog. Notice that dog is in double quotes. That says that the first double quote says I'm starting a string. The second one says I'm ending it. Everything in between is a string. Even if it's multiple words, multiple sentences, doesn't matter. It's a big string, a little string, whatever. So this puts the string dog, which is made of 3 characters, puts it into the variable pet and stores it. Now you can use single quotes too, and that's what the second example shows. I can say single quote and a string cat, single quote. JavaScript does not care if you use double quotes or single as long as they match. You can't use a single first and a double second at the end. They both got to be double or they both got to be single. Either one doesn't matter. And then I put this special example. Here's a variable zip code that I created with the let command, and I'm putting the string 68069, which is my zip code. Notice this is a string because there's quotes before and after it. That means this is not the number 68,069. it is the character string, character 6, character 8, character 0, character 6, character 9. Just like back up here in dog, this is the character string, character D, character O, character G. So this 68069 is a character string, not a number. I cannot add 10 to this. I cannot subtract 5. I can only display it like I would display any string, like a name. Once again, character is a single letter or a single character, number character. It's just one. And it's double quotes or single quotes. And finally, that one Boolean. Boolean is a mathematical construct, and it basically can hold, Boolean means there's two possible values, either true, false, or 1, 0. True is associated with a 1 by the computer. False is associated with 0. So when you're putting true and false in JavaScript, the computer is changing true to a 1 and false to a 0. In some programming languages, you just put 1 and 0 and it's true and false. Here's how you would do that. Maybe I have a variable named guess that I create, and I'm going to put the value true into here. Notice I do not have quotes because it's not a string. It is a Boolean, and Booleans can have one of two values in JavaScript: true, all lowercase, or false, all lowercase, with no quotes. All right. Now let's say that I'm going to parse a variable. Well, parsing a variable is a very interesting thing to do because it's a way of changing the type of a variable while the program is running. Not before it runs, not after, but during the execution or the running of the program. So usually you are changing a string into a number or a number into a string. Let's look at changing a string into a number. Let's say you have the character 4, and you want to change it into the number 4 because you want to use it in math. Well, you can parse it. You can parse that string into the number. And how you do that is to use one of two predefined, pre-written programs, which are called functions. Little programs are called functions in computer land. There's two of them in JavaScript that will parse a string into a number. Now remember, there's two kinds of numbers, integers and floats. So you can parse a string into an integer or parse it into a float. To parse it into an integer, you use the program parseInt. Okay, right there. Oops, sorry. A little. Well, we're going to get this. There we go. ParseInt is the name of the little program to change whatever string is between the parentheses. It will change it into an integer, and then you can put that in a variable. Or you can take whatever's between the parentheses, that's a string, and change it into a float number or a decimal number. That's parseFloat, and store that in a variable. Okay? So let's look at an example. Let's say you have a problem where you're trying to write a program that gets the user's age, adds 10, and displays back to the user how old they'll be in 10 years. And obviously this is very simplistic, but it will show our concepts really, really nicely. So first we need an algorithm. Well, let's see. The first thing I want to do in my program is make an empty variable named age to hold the user's age. And the second thing I want to do is I want to get the user's actual age from the user. And the third thing is I want to add 10 to the user's age. And the fourth thing is I want to show the new result to the user. So let's look at the program. I wrote the algorithm up here, and we'll write the program from each line of the algorithm. So the first thing is make an empty variable to hold the age. Okay, and I'm going to call it age. So let age get the value of single quote, single quote. Now I left a blank here just so you could see that there were two single quotes. Normally I would not leave a blank there. I just put single quote and the second single quote right next to it. And I could use two double quotes also. So that made an empty variable, meaning there's nothing in it right now, it's empty, called age. The second part of the algorithm says get the user's age from the user. There is a JavaScript command called prompt, and when you use prompt, it's going to put up a pop-up window, And what's going to be written on the pop-up window is the string that you put in these parentheses. So here between the parentheses, I say enter your age, colon, and space. So that prompt will put up a pop-up window, and it will say enter your age, colon, space. And whatever the user enters there, I'm going to put back into my age variable. So if the user enters 27, it'll take 27 and put it back in the age variable and store it there. One caveat: prompt changes everything to a string type before it stores it in the variable. Everything, whether it's a number, whether it's a Boolean, everything gets changed into a string type, and then you have to parse it if you want it to be anything but a string. So the next part of this algorithm says add 10 to the user's age. Well, here's the age variable, but I'm going to have to parse it into an integer because it's a string. It's the character 27. I need to do a parse int function on it. So I put it in the parentheses and I say do parse int on the value that's stored in age, and that will change it to the number 27, not the string. It'll change it from the string that I had in the second line to the number 27. Then I can add 10. Now I have the number 37, and that gets stored into this variable. So age gets the value of parse int on age plus 10. 37 gets stored back into age. It overwrites whatever was there before. And finally, my algorithm says show the result to the user. I'm going to use that alert, and in parentheses I put a template. There's my ticks, and you'll learn about a template in a moment if you haven't watched that video yet. And I want the message in the alert pop-up to say in 10 years you will be, and then here's a placeholder for whatever the age variable is holding. In this case it would be 37. Then I want it to say years old, exclamation point. Okay? So let's see how that looks running. So here's our 4 lines of code, and you can see there the code that we just wrote. There we're parsing and adding 10, and then we're outputting using a template literal. I'm going to run it. I'm going to enter my age, so I typed in 27 and hit OK. And it says in 10 years you will be 37 years old, just like it said to say in the template literal. So, and I'll say okay to make that go away. So that's how this is going to work. Oops, let's move here. That's how this works with variable types. I hope that helped you understand them, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.